Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining today. As a reminder, today is the second part of our three-part series focused on Azure cloud adoption using the Azure Well-Architected Framework. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Everyone today and all registrants will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording, just in case you didn't get a chance to see all of the content or weren't able to make it today. And it'll also have an overview of AVASOFT's capabilities and a PDF one-pager with some information on our offerings that are directly related to today's content. Also, in order to keep today as collaborative as possible, please make sure to use the chat or Q&A to ask questions, and we'll make sure to get answers to them as quickly as possible. Some we may answer in the chat, others we may read out loud to the presenters at the end, just to have them answer it out loud in the event that it requires a bit more information. And as a final item, if you find today's content helpful, make sure to check out our other webinars to get access to all of the other great content that we have going on this year. So just a little bit about AVASOFT before we dive in. AVASOFT's a globally recognized Microsoft Managed Solutions partner. We have, at this point, about 17 years of experience partnering with our customers and Microsoft to do everything that we can to deliver quality results to all of our customers. And as I mentioned, that we have a team of over 1,500 technologists globally, and we are headquartered in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. We also have offices in Canada, Ireland, and India. So a little bit about our partnership with Microsoft. Currently, we carry 5 out of the 6 solution areas, and in those solution areas, we hold 14 advanced specializations that range from AI to Azure Virtual Desktop to databases and cloud adoption, as well as 3 out of the 4 in the security space. We're also what's known as a registered supplier with Microsoft, which means that we have the ability to work with Microsoft to get some of these projects funded that allow us to try to keep a lot of these projects for adoption as cost effective as we possibly can. So with that, our presenters today from AVASOFT are Parthaban and Suhaila, who are leaders in our cloud and DevOps practice. So I will hand it off to them to get started. Thank you again. I'll let you two take it away.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Thanks for the introduction. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining the part 2 series of Azure, migration best practices. My name is Parthiban Sampath, and I help business architect migrate and optimize their workloads on Azure. I specialize in scalable, secure, and high-performance cloud solutions. Had the opportunity to work with multiple line of business like manufacturing, education, healthcare, e-commerce, green energy, and so on. At the end of the day, my focus is on making cloud adoption simpler, smarter, and most effective. Excited to see how we can support your cloud adoption journey. I'll let Suhaila give her introduction.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Parthiban. So, hi everyone. So, I'm Suhaila Parveen. I'm a cloud architect at AVASOFT, and I have been working over here for 5 years. And I had an opportunity to collaborate with clients across industries like logistics, healthcare, and all educational institutions. So, helping them to build a secure and scalable cloud environment, especially on Azure. So, as part of AVASoft's Microsoft partnership, so I specialize in Azure and I have worked on multiple advanced specialization, so ensuring the business to get the most out of their cloud environment. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Suhaila, for the introduction. So that being said, let's go over the agenda for today. So people who haven't watched our webinar's first part, which is best practices in Azure and why clients are moving to Azure, please check it out. That has a great content on why customers are selecting Microsoft and what are the challenges customers usually face while moving to Microsoft Azure. The second part of the series is going to discuss deep dive into Microsoft's cloud adoption framework and Microsoft's well-architected framework, and what are the patterns and practices that we follow in these frameworks, and how Azure, Azure Architecture Center also supports in this initiative, and when to use what, and a Q&A sessions for all these different topics. So that being said, Microsoft has heavily invested, in getting a lot of things, especially related to migration to Azure, and they have invested a lot of money and energy in collecting all the experiences of different customers and curating them into best practices framework. So with that being said, the main one of the main success metric that I see when I work with multiple customers in migration or adoption to a new technology is achieving the right balance between the stability and the speed. So if we, there are customers who are, highly focused on the speed and getting to the market faster, but just, miss the actual part of the stability and control where it will impact in the customer experiences. At the same time, if we focus more on the stability and control, we might just miss out the market trends, or we might even miss out on the edge of getting into the market sooner. So achieving the right balance is very crucial in adopting to any new technology. To do that, Microsoft also, along with partners like us, helps customers to align three main things, which is people, process, and technology. People including stakeholders, businesses, and process including all the different IT processes, existing systems in place, and technology which is relevant for their business use case. For which Microsoft has curated the information as cloud adoption framework and cloud well-architected framework, where they brought together documentations, tools, best practices, and templates to make the adoption faster and make the governance more easier, which will result in achieving the balance between the stability and the speed. So that being said, I'll let Soela to go over the cloud adoption framework and what are the common challenges and how we help customers in getting to that framework.
Thanks, Parthiban. So, everyone, like, let's start with CAF. So, as Parthiban mentioned, like, we are going to see about like what is CAF and WAF. So, let's start with CAF. So, think this is of your cloud journey roadmap, right? So, it is designed to help business to move the cloud in a structured and a predictable way. So, by following the CAF, so organization can ensure a smooth transition with the governance, security, and all the operational efficiencies in mind. So, Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework provides a structured and proven approach to cloud adoption. So, mainly it covers 6 different key stages, so that ensures the organization so getting the better strategies to move to their cloud. So the first one is like the strategy, so which is nothing but like identify why organization make this move. So why they need to go to the cloud, especially in Azure. So they need to align with their objectives, which means the business objectives. So like the reducing cost, so increasing the revenue, or entering into new markets and new technologies. So these are all the business goals that organization should define. So before they go to the move. So define the ROI also. So the return on investment, right? So they have to ensure their return on investment. So using tools like Azure Pricing Calculator and the TCO calculator. So this is about like the strategy. And the second key pillar in the CAF is like the plan. So this is where the discovery and assessment will come. So this is nothing but like identifying the application and all the workloads for migration. So which needs to migrate to the cloud at first level. So because we do have all the legacy applications and all the heavy workload applications that are presented in the on-premise. So organization should make sure like which one need to go to move in order to cut down the dependencies between the application to reduce the performance of the application. So to make sure that working correctly and it avoid any other issues in terms of the migrating. So classify the workloads using 5 R's framework. So we have talked about this 5 R's framework in our previous webinar as well. So which is nothing but the rehost, refactor, re-architecting, rebuild, and replace. So replace is nothing but the replacing the existing legacy application with the custom build application with the SaaS solution, which is Microsoft directly offering. And we can help you to rebuild the application as well, like rewrite the application for the cloud. So it will contains accessing the PaaS services which are offering by Azure, which is nothing but the Kubernetes app service and all those scenarios. And we will also helping out to the rehost scenario as well, like the lift and shift migration. We can just lift all the application and then we can move to the cloud and make sure the application is running effectively in cloud. So in this plan phase, so during the migration, right, so assessing the team readiness and skills also an important one, because so without having a skilled team members we can't able to do this migration. So that is where we will help you out. So we do have an experience in migrating the heavy workloads from on premise to the cloud to multiple organization. So we'll help you on that. And the third stage is the ready. So this is nothing but the setting up the first and foremost cloud environment. So creating a secure and scalable Azure landing zone for smooth migration is very important. We'll be diving deeper into this Azure landing zone in our next session. So we'll talk deep more about this in our next webinar. And let's talk about the adopt. So this adopt stage in the cloud adoption framework, right? So this is the crucial one. So covers the two major key aspects during this migration and modernization process. So the migration process, right? So this should be well structured to minimize the disruptions to business operation. So in this migration process, so Microsoft Azure itself offering multiple tools in order to make the migration efficient. So we can say about the database migration tool, Azure Migrate, and etc. In Azure Migrate, right? So this is the most common and the first and foremost tool that we need to use in order to do the assessment in the on-premise environment, and also it will help us to do the migration and optimizing the workload to the cloud. So how Azure Migrate support a seamless migration? So as I mentioned, like it is used for the discovery and assessment phase. So in that phase, like it identify all the dependencies, like which application needs to move to the cloud at the first level. So we can't able to move the database first and without the application business logic, right? So it discover and assess the everything, and it will give a clear roadmap for our migration. And server and database migration. So it is also supporting all the lift and shift, rehosting, and replatform strategies. And it helps refactor the application for better scalability and performance. So majorly organization make this move to the cloud, right? So in order to make sure their application is scalable and performance efficient. So in that way, Azure Migrate is a key tool. This is helping for the all the organization to make their move to the cloud is efficient. And during this assessment, right, so there will be an Azure Migrate and Modernize program which Microsoft offering, and AVASOFT will work with the Microsoft and provide you the Microsoft funded assessment to help the organization evaluate their cloud readiness. So in this, we are also covering the workload discovery and cost estimation, like what is the total cost of ownership to optimizing the cloud, and the strategic recommendation will be providing a roadmap for a structured and risk-free migration. And
I just want to have a call back on the similar customer story that we discussed in the first part of the webinar, where we involved to get a customer who's an education background to get out of their IT landscape which they were having from a co-hosted provider. And if you look at the strategy that Suhaila very deeply explained, the first things in the defined strategy was them to get out of VMware licenses, and their licenses are about to expire, and they have to do a renewal, or they have to make a call whether they're going to renew or they're going to move to cloud. So that is highly correlating with this cloud adoption framework, because we are highly in line with our process to match with Microsoft's cloud adoption process and add all the key value add that we can add to make it more smoother.
thanks for reminding that, Parthiban, this webinar. So the next one is the pilot migration. So which is another key important thing during the cloud migration journey, right? So many organizations hesitate to migrate due to concerns about like the performance, cost, and the potential downtime. So conducting a pilot migration, migrating a small or non-critical workload, right? So it will help address these concerns which I mentioned above. So it allows business to test their Azure capabilities and identify what are all the potential challenges they can face during the full-blown migration. So this insights gained help to refine the migration strategy, ensuring a smooth and efficient transition. So everything we are migrating to cloud, right? So the best practice is to do the pilot migration is a proven way to validate Azure's performance, security, and cost effectiveness, everything before committing to a full migration. So with AVASOFT, so we'll be doing that Microsoft funded assessment with the help of the Azure Migrate and Modernize program. So which will give you a roadmap to how to do the full blown migration. So and then we can do the pilot migration in the part of it. So the next stage will be govern and security. So in the govern stage, so like defining all the governance policies that needs to be applied in the cloud once you make the move to the cloud. So you'll be using that Azure Security Center and the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, everything to ensure that security and compliance is achieved in the migration. And that another stage is like the manage one. So it's ensuring the continuous monitoring, scalability, and the cost management. So you can use the Azure Monitor and the Azure Cost Management services, which is available in Azure, to make sure we are managing correctly that environment after did the migration. So there will be another stage. It's an organized stage. So it will be covering all the six key stages in the cloud adoption framework, which is organized. So it will establish a clear ownership using an RACI matrix, like who will be responsible for what, like who needs to manage the cloud, and what are all the roles and responsibilities needs to be given to the employees to access the cloud environment and everything. So these are the six key stages, and security is concerned in all the stages. So security is the one of the thing that every organization needs to make sure. So that will be covering in all the six key stages of the cloud adoption framework. Now, shifting our gears a bit. So while cloud adoption brings numerous benefits, right? So organizations often face hurdles along the way. So from security concerns to cost management, so these challenges can slow down the process. So let's walk through some of the most common issues businesses can encounter when adopting the cloud. So if you have any questions, team, so please feel free to post it in the Q&A session. We will address this at the end of this webinar. So now let's talk about some of the most common cloud adoption challenges that organizations face. So moving the cloud is not just about lifting and shifting workloads, right? So it requires a structured approach and the strategic planning and the governance. So I just want you to let you know some of the common problems that organization might face in each phase of the cloud adoption framework during their cloud adoption journey. So the first one, we can start with the strategy. Like, where do we start? So many organizations know that they need to adopt the cloud, but the big question is, where do we start? So some are driven by digital transformation, others by cost savings or scalability. But the challenge is figuring out the right path forward. So another one is the skill gap. So I already mentioned in the best practice, like we need to ensure the skills that the team require in order to do the migration, right? So in this phase, many organizations will get failed. They are failed to check their skills, what are all the technologies that they need to the migration. So many teams lack the expertise to adopt the cloud efficiently. So this is the challenge that they face in strategy and planning and organizational alignment. In the second phase, right? So once the decision is made, so the next step is like, how do we get there? So leaders need to organize the team and define a clear roadmap. So without alignment of the cloud, all this changes, right? So cloud adoption becomes inefficient. So we need to make sure all the checklist we do have followed everything in order to move to the cloud. And the third pillar is the readiness. So the organization commonly facing a structured cloud adoption plan. So a common challenge here is like configuring Azure environments efficiently. So without proper planning, like team also may get struggle in this to follow the best practices. So in order to set up the Azure landing zone, the first and foremost landing zone should follow all the best practices, which is mentioned in the cloud adoption framework is efficient. And adoption. So at this stage, so team face two key decisions. So they need to take the decision. Either they need to do the migration or they need to do the innovation. So here is where like the organization may fail to take the correct decision, and they go to the cloud with a legacy application, and they will face many other problems in the future. So instead of adopting all the cloud native SaaS and PaaS services. So here we need to make sure like we are choosing the correct one. And the governance phase. So it's another major challenges. So where security controls we need. So like the common question for the organization arises like, which security controls do we need and how do we ensure compliance? So without a proper governance, right, organization risk, maybe they face a security breaches or compliance issues, those things. And the final one is the managing part. So this is the ongoing cloud environment, right? So we have to manage everything after we make the move to the cloud. So the team need to understand like how to operate the cloud efficiently from monitoring to the cost optimization. So without this, like the cloud investments can quickly become expensive and difficult to manage. So as you can see, the cloud adoption is a journey with many moving parts. But the good news is like Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework providing a structured approach to tackle each of these challenges. So the key is to, yeah.
Sorry for interruption, Sohaila. So, and every time when customers talk to us about what are the what are the pitfalls that we should be aware before, where we get into any of the cloud adoption or any technological adoption, as we are a digital transformation company, the first and foremost or the most important problem that we see is the cultural change, the cultural impact. All the other things that we saw, the organization, planning, structure, everything can be fixed if we have a rigid plan in place, approvals from stakeholders and everything. But if we are going to do a complete transformation, cultural impact is huge. And we all like the way we work. We all like the tools that we work. And if we are made, somebody comes in and say that, okay, from tomorrow you're going to use a new tool, everybody gets, uh, everybody gets difficult to process that, and most of the conflicts, tussles will rise there. So aligning the people, process, and technology again is playing a key role here when it comes to the adoption. And go for it, Soila.
Yeah, so I'll complete this CAF with this little slogan like you adopt a cloud with a plan and modernize with purpose and operate with confidence. So, this is the key when we are doing this cloud adoption thing. Okay, so now once you're in cloud, right? So, how do you ensure the long term success? So, that is where the WAF comes in, which is the Azure Well-Architected Framework. So WAF is just a set of best practices and consideration that organization needs to be followed while designing their workloads and operating their workloads in Azure. So unlike CAF, which help you to get to the cloud, WAF help you to build and maintain an efficient, secure, and scalable workloads. So let's talk about what are all the pillars that WAF having. So WAF is built on 5 key pillars. So each of these pillars help you ensure that whatever we build on Azure is reliable, secure, cost effective, operational efficient, and high performing. So reliability. So imagine your application suddenly crashes. So the real question is like, can it recover quickly and it will be continuous it's running? So reliability is all about handling the failures gracefully, whether it's a network issue or a server crash or a massive traffic spike. So and the next one will be the security. So in today's world, like as I mentioned, like security is non-negotiable, right? So we need to ask, are our application and data protected from threats? So this includes like the identity protection, encryption, and the compliance with security standards. So we have to ensure all these things are applied in our in our environment. And the cost optimization, so this is the one of the big deals because no one wants to overspend on cloud resources, right? So the goal is to maximize the value of what we are paying for. So whether it's through auto scaling or reserved instances or shutting down the unused instances, so we have to choose like which method I need to use for my cloud environment to optimize the cost. And the operational excellence. So just because your system is running, this doesn't mean it is efficient. So you have to monitor and manage it effectively. So this include like setting up the logging, alerting, automation to keep things running smoothly. The final one is like the performance efficiency. So we need to ensure our application can handle workloads efficiently while scaling. So performance is nothing but it's all about scaling. So we have to ensure our application is scaling with an efficient manner. So we have to ensure that. So this means like we can use the catching mechanism and response times and like we can choose the right infrastructure for the job. So as I mentioned, like the organization face challenges while choosing the adopt methodology, which is migrate or innovate. They have to wisely choose the innovate option when they need to get rid of their old legacy system. So then only they can achieve their performance efficiency. So each of these pillar, right, the WAF providing, so each with comes with recommendation, trade-offs, and design principles. So let me give a quick intro about each one of this. So trade-offs. So trade-off is nothing but like we need to manage the balance between pillars. So some of the organization wants to reduce the cost, but they can face the security issues. So we have to ensure like which pillar we need to more focus on. And same like performance versus cost. So this trade-offs will help us to choose the correct mechanism of the each one of the pillars, like what are the things that we need to follow and the design principles. So design principles to be followed in order to deliver a well-architected environment. So well-architect is nothing but like after we made a first footprint in the cloud, right? So in that, right, we have to, if you are developing a new things, we have to follow all the well-architected design principles to ensure our application running smoothly on the Azure cloud environment. And the final one is the recommendation. So the recommendation is nothing but after we made a move and we have an application running in our cloud environment, so we need to make sure like all the recommendations that Azure is providing then and there is addressed or not. So that is one of the efficient thing. Yeah. For example, I just need to give a quick real world example with an healthcare application. So if you are using a healthcare application, right, so you need to make sure that is reliable. So if that system goes down, so the people who already suffering, they needs to contact the a doctor. So in that way, like the reliability comes in a picture. So that needs to our system needs to handle all the outages. So our environment is needs to be disaster recovered environment. And the security, so it's a patient data, right? So obviously it needs to be secured and in an efficient manner. And the cost optimization, as it is a healthcare application, so it needs to be running in a 24/7, then only it can provide facilities and all the services to patients. So we need to make sure like the auto scaling is enabled in our applications. And operational excellence and the performance efficiency, so we need to ensure our application do not get a downtime in any of the hurdles. So they need to set up all the monitoring and alerting mechanism in the application to ensure that application is up and running for the 24/7. So in this case itself, you have seen, right, so all the five pillars of WAF comes into a picture. So then only we can build an first, I mean, if you're building a first application also, right, so from the day one you can build an efficient application if you follow the WAF, all the pillars.
Yeah.
So
Along with that, we recently had a conversation with one of our customers who is from European Union, and we were discussing on modernizing their mobile application. So we have come up with a different strategy for different. So we just came up with three different methods where we can deploy the application in Azure App Services. We can deploy the Azure application in Azure Container Apps, and we can also deploy the application in Azure Functions. So while me and Suela was working on this project, and while we were talking to the customer, this WAP, these five pillars was really was in action in the conversation. And we were talking about, so okay, hey customer, so if you want a really a highly cost optimized scenario, Functions is the way, because it just runs and it is based on consumption basis, and it's going to give the highest cost optimization benefit. And the other one was if you're going to go with the performance efficient and operational excellence, ACA is going to be the place, because it's having auto restart facilities. It just scales up as needed and all those things. And we were also talking about when we were talking about these two things, customers came back and said, see, it's 5 o'clock, more than 5, I don't have to even stay for one more minute. So my biggest, and that is also highly relevant, because the IT wing is working separately, and the customers they're using are their truck drivers. So what he's saying is completely makes sense, because once the IT wing closes off, the truck drivers will be still driving, and they don't need to have any outages, any downtime until the IT team comes back if there is any issue. So he basically came back and said, see, I have app services and it is working till now with zero problems, and I just want to continue the same way. So there he came back with the reliability principle. So there is he was ready to trade off on cost, and he was also ready to trade off on the performance version. So which was there is no right method in doing this. So the best way to do a well-architected framework review is what it is really suited for the customer, and how well we are balancing these five is what is important.
yeah, thank you for sharing that real-time story, Patavan. So once the cloud adoption is underway, right? So the next challenge is maintaining a well-architected environment. So many organizations struggle with optimizing cost or ensuring the security and all the maintaining performance and all the efficient pillars. So let's break down like some of the key challenges and discuss like how they can be addressed effectively. So the first one with the operational excellence. So the one of the biggest hurdles team faces is lack of issue identification and deployment automation. So without clearing and monitoring dashboards and the alerting mechanisms, right? So the troubleshooting becomes reactive instead of proactive. So the real time, I mean, the example, the healthcare application, if any issues that is affecting that application, that needs to be addressed immediately instead of acting reactively, because it's, I mean, like dealing with the patient. So they need immediate attention when they are suffering. So the second one is like the reliability. So many organizations don't have a clear resiliency strategy. So whether it's a backup or a disaster recovery environment or a workload health monitoring. So without this, even a small outage, that small outage also can lead a major downtime of the application. So the security, so security is non-negotiable as we all know. So yet many organizations lack proper authentication mechanism and the encryption. So without this, like the sensitive data will be at risk. So that organization needs to make sure their environment is completely governed. And the performance efficiency. So it's all about again monitoring and choosing the right technology. So when to use the what. So, I mean, which PaaS or SaaS or IA service do I need to use for my organization? So, the cost optimization. So, one of the biggest mistake in cloud adoption, right? So, it's wasting money on underutilized resources. So, without a proper cost monitoring and a structured billing, company either overspend or cut budget in the wrong places. So, the key is to align the cloud investments with business priorities and avoid unnecessary cost. So at the end of the day, so WAF is not a one time thing, it's a continuous process. So technology evolves, business needs change, and so your cloud architecture should. So the key is to build the future in mind and making the informed trade offs along the way. And so the common question is often we get right. So when should use CAF and when should we focus on WAF? So understanding when to apply each framework is crucial for making an informed decision. So let's clarify the differences and how they complement each other in different stages of cloud adoption. When discussing WAF and CAF, right? So it's helpful to position them in terms of their purpose and when to use what. So think WAF is your blueprint for cloud architecture best practices. So it's focused on ensuring your solution is efficient, resilient, and cost effective. So which contains all the five pillars to ensure that. And use WAF when you're building or optimizing an applications on Azure and need a guidance on how to ensure they are aligned with all the cloud best practices. So CAF is your roadmap for successfully adopting Azure and transforming your business for the first time. So it provide a guidance on strategy, planning, governance, and implementation. So it help you to move to the cloud with a smooth and organized way. So when you're planning to move to workloads to Azure for the first time, I mean, they're either in an initial adoption or a migration phase. So it's the best during the early stages of cloud adoption. To summarize this, like, I mean, when to use what? So WAF is best for building and optimizing once you are in the cloud, and CAF is a key to planning and adopting the Azure in first place. So this way you can ensure your cloud migration or your cloud strategy is both efficient and secure from the start itself, and your architecture is aligned with the best practices as you move forward.
Yeah. So that being said, we also, I just want to paste you something here. So this is how we can help as a partner in enabling your cloud migration and your cloud adoption journey. And we have a lot of different workshops, assessments that is focused on each and every different phase of the cloud adoption journey. So I just want to paste this here so you can take a screenshot. It'll be easy for you to reach when you're reaching us on the in whatever phase you're in your cloud adoption journey. So that's all we have for you today, and please stay tuned for upcoming webinars on we have lined up a lot of different topics that's relevant to migration, adoption, new technologies, and different edge services from Azure.
All right. So, like some of the other webinars, I sent out an email asking for any questions that they might have, just in case some of the people did not ask any questions. I wanted to make sure that we touch base on all of them. So I have two questions from the pre-email. So the first one is, should I do this type of review regularly or only when I'm planning to make large migration changes?
So that is a very good question. We usually recommend doing well-architected framework review regularly, yearly once, or 6 months one would be an ideal time to have a well-architected review because of the changes, and also it's highly dependent on the changes that your environment is going through. If you are someone who are at a very faster pace of your adoption, you're doing a lot of things happening around, so we would recommend you to do a well-architected framework review every 6 months to 1 year. And if you're a new customer to the cloud, the first time cloud adoption and the well-architected framework every year would be the ideal placement, Chuck.
Out of all of the pillars for the framework, do you feel that there are any that are more critical than others?
Yeah. So for the five principles, the five pillars, security is inevitable, and we cannot compromise anything on security. There are customers where we had a outage, we had downtimes, we have some loading issues, customer experiences issues, but it was always able to, we were always able to come back at a relatively high speed compared to having a security outage. So security is inevitable, and that holds the highest priority.
Okay. All right. And then I have one more that was a little bit of a comment, but there's kind of a question associated with it. So I'm going to convert this one into a question. When doing a migration, are there any workloads that are more important to do the framework review with? They mention things like SQL, just regular infrastructure, VMs, and migration. So, like I said, converting that into a question, do you feel like it is more critical to do the framework review if I'm migrating, say, SQL databases versus just moving VMs?
Yeah, so that is also a very good question because while dealing with complex migrations, one of the important thing, there are two important things. One is stickiness of the application, and the other one is the consistency of the data. So with this kind of scenarios, it's always recommended to do a in-depth assessment of the data structure and the data of the data structure of the databases and the data sources the customers have, and then proceed with the migration, which gives a clear overview on what kind of data we are dealing with. And if there are any inconsistencies already with the versions, that it's already overlapping, and those kind of stuff can be, proactively catched before we, get into the actual migration. So data consistency and the data structure assessment is very important before going into the migration. And if the application stickiness, if the application is heavily, sticking with, or it has some high dependencies with the infrastructure that is running on in the on-premises, even if we are moving it from on-prem to cloud, for example, let's say your application is running on a server 2016 or server 2012 R2, that is no more supported in Azure. So definitely there's going to be issues on the dependencies. So doing an assessment on the dependency and stickiness of the application before moving to cloud is also an important factor to consider.
So what I got out of that is to summarize, if it's a more complex type of application with multiple dependencies, maybe there hasn't been a review on the data, it's definitely significantly more important to do the framework review versus if I'm just doing a VM migration from on-prem. It should be done at all times, but these are the ones, if you had to choose, these would be the more critical areas.
100%.
Perfect. Okay, so that was all the questions that we had. And so I wanted to give a final thank you to everyone who attended and registered. Do not forget to check out all of the other great content that we have coming up across the entire Microsoft ecosystem, as well as the third part to this series. And as a final note, as part of Unmentioned, we would be happy to schedule some time to chat with any of you who may be interested in deep diving or at least discussing a potential project in the future. Thank you again, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.